Have you ever wondered what is the approval rate for EB2 NIW or EB1A? Or for these green cards, what is the top 10 list of countries by number of approvals? In this video, we cover that and a little bit more. Hi, my name is Oscar, and as you know, I'm a scientist, not a lawyer. In this channel, we talk about those green cards, EB2 NIW, EB1A, in which you can self-petition. And this is very important. It means that you can do it by yourself. Do it yourself, without a lawyer, without spending a lot of money on legal fees, and you can also do it without a job offer, without having a company sponsoring you. If you are in the US or if you are abroad, it doesn't matter. As long as you're qualified, you can do it. Today, we talk about approval rates. What are those numbers? Let's see what USCIS has to tell us. Well, USCIS, the agency that governs this kind of green cards, publishes approval and denial data for each quarter. And they just released very recently the data for the first quarter of fiscal year 2024. Remember that fiscal years for USCIS go from October until September of the following year. So quarter one goes from October to the end of the year, right? So with that in mind, let's see what we are going to cover today. We're going to see that approval rate number, and we have covered that kind of data before. You have this video with the full year, fiscal year 2023 that I analyzed recently. Today, we're going to add one data point for fiscal year 2024, but we are also going to cover the top 10 country list by number of approvals for both categories. And we are also going to see something that we have never seen here, which is the number of petitioners that are waiting for visa numbers. We know that recently we have had backlogs, especially in EB2, which includes EB2 NIW. So we're going to quantify how many people are waiting in line to get that visa number for them to become current in the visa bulletin. So let's start one thing at a time. So this is where I get the data from. This is the official data. I leave this link that you have here on the side. You don't have to worry about copying it. You will have it down there in the description where you can click it. You can access the data, the raw data, and you can do your own analysis. So you don't really have to trust me if you don't want to. But one thing that I really need to say is that this is the first time that USCIS provided the data in an Excel spreadsheet format and not a PDF, which makes things a little bit easier. And I'm thankful to USCIS for finally doing this. It should have been done a long time ago, really. What I do with this data is, even though they provide received case, approved, denied, and pending cases, I really focus on approvals and denials. And I compare approvals to denials by using this simple formula, which is approval rate is equal to the number of cases that have been approved in this particular quarter divided by the sum of the approvals and denials. And we multiply it times 100 to get the percentage, and that's the number I'm going to show you in just a moment. So let's see what the data tells us. So first of all, let's get into percentage approvals by quarter. And this is the graph I showed you in the previous video. Today we're going to unveil that new data point. But here we have in green EB2 NIW, in blue we have EB1A. And of course, traditionally we see a higher approval rate for EB2 NIW, which is a lower category in terms of requirements. Is easier, quote unquote, to get an approval for EB2 NIW. So it makes sense to think that approval rates should generally be higher than EB1A, which is the highest category. You have to demonstrate extraordinary abilities. You have to show that you are one of the top percentage in your field. Okay, so this is what the data showed us during 2022, 2023. But we saw how recently in the last quarters, EB2 NIW particularly, but also EB1, the approval rates were declining and declining fast. EB2 NIW for a few quarters from almost 100% approval rates, it declined to about 70%. So really, we have been concerned about this. A lot of people in the comments mentioned that, and I share that concern, but I also said, well, you have to wait and see. We have to add more data points and see if this trend consolidates or this trend stops being like this. One thing that didn't make a lot of sense is that in the last quarter of 2023, we saw how EB1 and EB2 NIW really converged and got really an identical approval rate. And like I said earlier, this doesn't make a lot of sense because EB1 should be naturally harder to get and EB2 NIW should be a little bit easier to get. So that told me that maybe this decline is true indeed, but maybe it's because a lot of people are sending cases for EB2 NIW. EB2 NIW have become really, really, really popular. I mean, we have seen this in this channel, how comments are on the rise, how there's more attention. There's new consultants being put into activity, a lot of lawyers showing a lot of interest for this type of visa. And my hypothesis was that, well, this decline in approval rates may just be because people are submitting cases that are not really solid, that maybe they are not well crafted. Maybe people didn't attend my course. I mean, I'm joking. But truly, people are less prepared. They don't get the right resources. They don't get the right advice. And they submit cases that are really not cutting it, okay? And USCIS had to reject more cases, or denied, better say, more cases because they were just not getting to the minimum acceptable standard. So that's just my hypothesis on why this could happen. Let's see what happens when we add this new data point of fiscal year 2024, which is now here, and we see how the trend seems to start reverting, okay? We see that green line, the EB2 NIW line, going up a little bit. We are approaching 77%. EB1 is now a little bit, there's a little bit of gap. So we seem to be going back to a more normal situation. But I tell you exactly the same thing I just said. We cannot just look at one data point. We will have to wait and see how the trend continues to develop, how this recovery of approval rates consolidates, or is just a one-off. Really, you cannot look at historical data and just cherry pick one point. Now, what I was saying earlier is that there's a lot more attention in the recent times, and we have seen that jump really clearly from fiscal year 2022 to fiscal year 2023. You see how cases for EB2 NIW go from 4,000, 2,000 to 10,000 cases approved and denied each quarter. So it really shot up by 3 times pretty much. EB1 also increased, but of course EB1, the absolute numbers are lower always because, again, it's a higher standard category. Less people are able to submit cases for this. But you see how the demand is steadily up. I mean, it has gone up and it is not coming down. And now I'm adding that data point for fiscal year 2024. And you see that the demand remains quite high. In fact, we are at a stable rate of number of cases approved and denied each quarter. Okay, so it seems that the demand is not going anywhere. We'll have to see how the new fees that were implemented on April 1st, 2024 will affect this interest of people. Maybe people now, because they have to pay more than $1,000 for an I-140, maybe they are going to be more conservative and send less cases. We're going to have to see if that is true or not. By the way, if you want to hear everything about the new asylum fee, you can go and check out my video on that. And soon we'll make an updated video about the overall costs of an EB2 NIW and EB1A green card categories. But in the meantime, if you are very serious about this process, we have 2 websites that are really, really good for people like you that want to do it themselves. We have eb1greencard.info for EB1A and eb2niw.info for EB2 NIW. We have a lot of articles that you can read for free. We have sample petitions you can download. And above everything, we have online courses that will guide you step by step in everything that you need to know about, for example, EB2 NIW. This is the course curriculum for EB2 NIW. We have 10 modules full of video lectures in English and in Spanish, where I show you the requirements, how to fulfill requirements, how to craft documents like the petition cover letter, professional business plans, recommendation letters. You can submit questions in each lesson, and I will do my best to reply probably within a day. And once a month, we meet in a Google Call meeting, and you can face-to-face ask me whatever you need to ask. We have a lot of great verified reviews. I'm showing one of them here about how people really love the product. You can go and check them out. You can read all those reviews and consider joining and joining not only a course, but a community. All right, let's now go with a fun part of this video, which is what is the top 10 approvals by country. First for EB1, and then we're going to see for EB2 NIW. In EB1A, we have China in the top of the list with more than 1,000 approved cases in the year 2024. And in the second position, we have India, not surprisingly, with more than 500 approvals in that quarter. Remember that for Indians and Chinese born citizens, it makes sense to apply for EB1A whenever they can, whenever they have those qualifications that should be very high. Because for EB2, they are really backlogged, especially India. They are super backlogged, more than a decade long of wait time for them in the visa bulletin. So it makes sense that they are applying more on EB1, those, of course, that can do that. Then in third place, we have Brazil, then Russia, Canada, the United Kingdom. Then we have Venezuela, Iran, Colombia, and Nigeria. We have Venezuela and Colombia in bold because for the Spanish channel, we like to highlight those countries that speak Spanish. But you see more or less what is this top 10 of countries. Let's compare now with EB2 NIW, how EB2 NIW looks in comparison. So China is again number one with over 1,300 approvals in that quarter. Then we have Brazil, then we have Iran, and India is in the fourth place with 758 approvals in quarter one fiscal year 2024. And this is probably because, India being lower than in EB1A, because Indians have to wait so long for an EB2 visa number that is probably a deterrent. A lot of Indians may think twice before submitting an I-140 for EB2 NIW when they know that they have a decade-long wait time at least for the visa bulletin to allow them to either file their adjustment of status or proceed to consular process. Well, after India, we have Nigeria, Bangladesh, South Korea, Pakistan, and finally Colombia and Venezuela, which are in both lists. This list changes a little bit from quarter to quarter. It's always nice to take a look, but it's curiosity more than anything else, okay? So now that we mentioned backlogs, let's take a look at some data that I never really discuss in this type of video, which is number of petitions waiting for a visa number. And particularly for EB2, because in EB1 there's not a lot of people waiting. In fact, I think for EB2 I have the number here. For EB1 we have approximately 25,000 petitioners waiting for a visa number, mostly from India and China. If you go to the visa bulletin, those are the countries in EB1 that are a little bit backlogged. But in EB2, all countries right now are backlogged. This is the graph that shows from 2020 to 2024, at the beginning of the year, how many people were waiting for that visa number to become available to them. And you see that numbers fluctuate a little bit, but they are always hovering the 300,000 petitioners waiting. This number doesn't include beneficiaries. Better said, derivatives is for principals only, okay? We are now at a quite high number of backlogged people, but this data is really not telling the whole story because, as you know, the green card system in the US, it works in a quota system, and there are quotas for different things, but one of the important quotas is the per country quota. And we know that countries like India or China are especially backlogged, so we have to break down this data into countries. So I'm going to show you how that looks like. And you see that India is always the country that accounts for most of the petitioners waiting for a visa number. And then we have China also with a considerable amount of people waiting. And really up to 2023, those two countries accounted for pretty much 100% of those people waiting for a visa number, because it was not until the end of 2022 where we saw rest of world starting to get backlogged in the visa bulletin. But in 2024, if we add them up, there's still a little bit of gap, and that 7% gap is the 7% of rest of world petitioners that are waiting for a visa number based on the visa bulletin that we usually analyze here on a monthly basis as soon as it comes out, because that is the publication that really gives you an estimate of what is the wait time for you to become current, for you to be able to send an adjustment of status if you are in the US, or to get that interview in the consular processing route if you are abroad. All right, so I hope you like this new plot that I'm showing in this video. I'm going to show it next year as well, so we can keep comparing where the backlog is going, what countries are accumulating the backlog. I don't expect big changes here, but it's always good to keep an eye. Now, what do these approval numbers mean to you? Well, these numbers are not your probability of success. They are not, okay? These are statistics, overall statistics that USCIS publishes based on all the cases that they are processing in this quarter, and you should not take them as, okay, if I submit now, I have a 77% chance of getting an approval for an I-140 EB2 NIW. That's just not how statistics work, okay? It should give you an overall idea of how tough or easy it is, fine, but each case is unique, and your success really depends on, who are you professionally? What is your profile? What is your proposed endeavor if we are talking about NIW particularly? What is the quality of that petition package that you crafted? And hopefully if you follow my course, you will have a high quality petition package. You will be well prepared. That really plays a big role, okay? And those are factors you can control, but we have other factors that really are beyond our control. And one of them is, who is the officer that is going to review your case? We know that some officers may be stricter and some officers may be a little bit, less strict. And that's how human beings are, okay? So USCIS is formed by humans like you and me. So that factor shouldn't be discounted. And maybe there's other factors that I'm missing here. So is there anything else that you can think of that can play a role in your approval chance? I mean, some of you will say, well, the administration, who is the current president? Is it Biden, or eventually will it be Donald Trump again? So do you think that plays a role? I already gave my opinion in a recent live session we had here in this channel, but we can keep that conversation going as we approach the elections in November. But is there anything else at all that you can think of? What do you think about these top 10 countries of approvals? What do you think about the overall percentage of approvals for EB1 and EB2 NIW? Let me know in the comments below. I always like to read your comments. And above all, I want to finish this video hoping and wishing you good luck in your green card journey. And I will see you here next week with another video.